Hey guys, it's Brigitte with San Diego Seed Company, and today I'm going to be talking about what to plant in March in zone 9 and 10. So we totally know what it feels like to be in the garden in March after being totally cooped up in January and February. You want to plant everything in the garden. And you can in zone 9 and 10, but it's not really a good idea. And in this video, I'm going to jump into the details and the nuances of what you should be planting when in March so you get the most out of your garden and your plants don't struggle and are stagnant and boring and not do anything because the temperatures are still a little too cold. So if you watch this whole video, you're going to know how to start seeds like a professional farmer in zone 9 and 10 and focus on the crops that really matter and not waste your time starting crops that are really not going to thrive right now when the weather is iffy and still not quite as warm as they need to be. Okay, so what should you be planting in March in zone 9 and 10? You really need to focus on kind of two sets of vegetable crops. Your starts, which are things that you want to start now because they take so many weeks to get into the transplant form to transplant out. Now, if you have a limited amount of time, the one must that you have to do in March is start your tomatoes, your peppers, your eggplants, and your basils. And tomatillos, not on here, but you could kind of put them with the tomatoes, right? And that's because it can take anywhere from 5 to 8 weeks to get these plants up into a transplant form and out into the garden. So you really don't want to wait. Now, the thing that I always tell people in zone 9 and 10, you don't have to have that feeling like the rabbit in Alice in Wonderland of, I'm late, I'm late, I'm late, I'm late. You can grow 365 days a year, so there's a very long period that you have to start these. But the reason why March is the magic time to get these started is because then they'll be up and ready to transplant into your garden around May, which is literally the perfect time before the summer heat hits for them to get established and then really take off through the summer. You also can direct sow crops now if you're really itching, but there's some caveats, and you'll notice I've got some asterisks here. So all of your big seeded warm season crops like your beans, your corn, your melon, your squash, and your pumpkins, you can plant now. But keep in mind, especially if you're on the coast in zone 9 or 10, it's still not quite warm enough for them to germinate quickly. And so yes, it will work, but it's more time and energy for you to keep that area moist, because it might take 7 to 10 to maybe 14 days for those seeds to germinate. Whereas if you wait just maybe towards the end of March or even the beginning of April, they'll germinate in like 7 days. So it's up to you on what you want to do, but that's why we have the asterisk there. And lastly, I've got some cool season crops in here because there's still time to do last rounds of cool season crops that are short days to maturity. That's important. So no broccoli, cabbage, or cauliflower, but you still have time for beets and carrots and radishes, some leafy greens, kale. You can do your final rounds of those and they'll grow very quickly. They'll want to go to flower quickly because our days are getting longer, but as long as you harvest them heavy and hard, you can get a couple last rounds of delicious greens in your garden in March. Okay, so now let's talk about flowers. So I literally could fill this whole board up with all the flowers that you could do in March. It's a prime time to be planting flowers in zone 9 and 10 because we have warmer temperatures, but it's not wicked hot yet, and the daylight hours are getting longer, so everything wants to bloom. A flower happens when it's triggered by longer hours of sunlight to tell the plant, hey, spring and summer is coming, flower, set your seeds, put your genetics out into the world. That's why spring is such a beautiful time all around the United States and in every zone, because everything is flowering. So you can stick in the ground a lot of transplants and seeds to get growing. Just to name a few: alyssum, borage, bluebell, calendula, cosmos, flax, gaillardia, gomphrena, hollyhock, lupine, milkweed, nigella, strawflower, wildflower, yarrow, zinnias, and sunflowers. You can all start those by seed form now. You can either direct sow some of them or put them in transplanters to plant out, and you'll have beautiful blooms come May when spring is really in its best time. All right, if you're a gardener or even a farmer in zone 9 and 10, we would love it if you subscribe to our channel so that we can communicate with each other and learn from each other. I would love it if you post a comment on this video and tell me what mistakes have you made starting crops too soon, or what tips or tricks have you learned to start seeds in March that have really set you up for success all through the summer? I know what it's like in March to be wanting to plant every single seed that you have in your seed organizer, but you really got to focus on the crops that need a jump start first, and that's all of your Solanaceae. So your peppers, your eggplants, and your tomatoes really benefit from seed starting now. And your big seeded direct sown crops like your corn, your beans, your squash, and your pumpkins, they can actually wait because oftentimes the soil isn't quite warm enough for them to germinate quickly. And the longer it takes them to germinate in the soil, the more likely they're going to get eaten by something, or your irrigation's not going to be enough. It's just a little more problematic. Can you do it? Yes, we've done it many years. Is it extra work? Absolutely. And we're not 100% sure that the return on investment is worth it. All right, so if your time is limited, which most people don't have endless amounts of time, what seeds in March should you really be focusing on? You should be focusing on starting your basil. Super important that basil gets a head start so that you can get it out into the garden and it can really take advantage of the summer heat. Also tomatoes, another big one. You really want to get started now so that you can get them up into a transplant size and plant out. Also tomatillos, very similar to tomatoes. This is an amazing variety if you haven't tried it. Eggplants, also in the Solanaceae family, and enjoy a head start planted in a transplant and then planted out into the garden. And peppers. All of these crops can take anywhere from 5 to 8 weeks to get them up to a size to plant out. And let's just do the math really quickly. If we're in March and let's say it takes an average of, let's say 8 weeks, that's 2 months. That means you're not planting it out March, April, you're not planting it out till May. So you could see how if you wait longer, you're just pushing further and further into the heat of the summer, and you're missing a lot of that spring temperature that these plants enjoy to get established.